at some point we are going to have to do a whole show about how good this show sounds.
Hey everybody, welcome to Downballot, the flagship podcast of having fixed one's wireless DMX lighting setup so the lights don't flicker anymore. You can find this podcast on any of your favorite podcatchers and on the tubes of you if you would like to see us. The lights flickering maybe scared some people away. You can support this project at echoplexmedia.com. Just click the support tab, find your favorite way to support the podcast. And I am producer Dave. You can find me on Threads.
Ooh, fantastic. I might have to look for you there. This is the Councilman. As always, you can find me on X at THE_Councilman. You can also find me in the club, bottle full above my mouth. Got what you need if you need to feel the buzz. And yeah, if my lights are flickering, it's just because the wiring in our house is fucked. So we desperately need new wiring, just a complete renovation here. So one day it'll be just fabulous, and maybe I'll have a whole room dedicated to to streaming, and have a track lighting installed, the whole 9 yards. But for now, every time I kick my foot out, I knock the power adapter out of the wall because we only have 2-pronged outlets in this house, and we have to have a bunch of 3 to 2 prong adapters. So I knock it out of the wall, and that's when my entire system crashes. So if I ever drop off, it's because I got so excited I kicked the wall.
Great. We should have you on our tech podcast. How the tech are you, to talk about your outlet situation?
Dude, I could be your like control group.
All right. Well, we're not here to talk about that, although it would be fun. Maybe we can talk about this in the future, getting you on a late night sometime to shoot the shit. Maybe when you got some time, because I think you'd have a lot of fun checking in on the rest of.
Yeah, of course, I got to do it now, especially now that the child is in child care and getting good night's sleeps. So I might have to move into the other room, but I can certainly join later night for sure.
Yeah. If you don't mind, it'd be a lot of fun. It'd be a lot of fun having you on. Watch some cat videos and dystopia stuff.
Oh, very nice. And heck, if the child is up, the child can come on the show. It's her bedtime, like right in the middle of Downballot. So lovingly, the good wife gets to handle that.
The other shows don't start till 9, and if the baby's in bed, we get the good wife on to fucking talk some shit too, maybe. Anyway,
there you go. She's usually pretty spicy.
Anyway, congratulations, by the way, to her on her re-election to the Central Committee for the Democratic
Thank
Party.
you. It was substantial. She was the top vote getter among currently elected officials.
Hell yeah!
Good on her. And really crushed it as far and away in 3rd place in a vote for 6. So hooray! I think she was only bested by a school, like a county or a community college school board member. And then one of our neighbors who's run for city council like 8 billion times and now serves on the Open Space Authority. So good on her.
Hell yeah!
Well, props.
Leading off, we covered a story on the Sunday show about a man who was set ablaze, but it was a completely different scenario. It was a protest.
Interesting. I added this to the docket simply because the headline struck me as something that was very, very much plexy, and went beyond the down ballot over, as it were. But it seems to strike home.
So what do we got?
I don't really know. Actually, we're gonna see for the very first time. Someone apparently set themselves on fire or got set on fire accidentally in a THC manufacturing or cannabis manufacturing facility. And I think we're just going to see some security cam footage of him emerging from the facility, and then just a really brief news hit follow-up. So this is just leading off, just something to get our palate wet.
Marijuana processing plant in the East Bay is being treated for serious burns following a chemical fire. The man was working at a THC extraction facility in Berkeley this morning when a barrel, which may have contained chemicals, caught fire. People working nearby say they heard an explosion before the building caught fire and saw the burning victim run outside. According to the fire department, the man suffered serious second-degree burns to his hands, was taken to an emergency burn center in San Francisco.
This is a THC extraction plant lab, and somehow one of the barrels, 55-gallon drum, caught fire, burned the gentleman's hands, the victim's hands, and fire is now out. Now they're just doing some cleanup.
No other injuries were reported. The cause of the fire is under investigation.
We have been reporting on the...
Wait, no injuries were reported?
Yeah, I thought the guy had burns on his hands. Are those not injuries?
Maybe I just misheard it and she said no other injuries were reported.
Might have been, or maybe she might have skipped a word. I'm disappointed. I'm so sorry. There should have been video of that in that.
No,
clip.
I'm actually glad we didn't have to watch a video of that, if I'm being honest.
But yeah, be careful when you're extracting THC, especially into 50-gallon barrels, and make sure that you're wearing all the appropriate, safety gear, because shit does catch fire, not just in drug labs, but just in labs in general. So if you're doing labs, make sure that you're labbed up.
So they use a lot of solvents under pressure to create like the wax that you might purchase if you were braver than I am, for example. I do like the cartridges though, but they do use solvents under pressure for that stuff, and so it's not impossible for an explosion, hopefully a small one, to happen.
Yeah.
And don't do that shit at home. It's legal now, so.
Exactly. You can get really nice tasting dabs that don't taste like they were run through a whole bunch of chemicals before they got to you, even though they probably were.
They were.
Yeah. And yeah, like you, I certainly have dabbled, shall we say, But it's certainly not something that when I go to the cannabis store, I am seeking out. Generally speaking, I will do the cartridges for sure. And then mostly flower though. I'm very traditional that way. The occasional edible.
I remember the first time we had Dirtbag Dan on, he gave me his dab and I fucking saw stars, dude.
Yes, I think the same thing happened with Chip DeVille, with the good wife and I, when we were over at his place watching him play video games one night. Such a great vocation, watching other people play video games. But it's really easy when you're dabbed up and completely lubricated. Well, so, that was leading off.
So, and now in the winners and losers, where there are no winners, unless you were rooting for somebody, and then they probably, or unless you were rooting against someone, then they probably win. We're going to stay on the weed tip here. This is good. We haven't covered a lot of weed news lately.
Yeah,
apparently, San Jose weed businesses are at odds with the city over crime protection. This is weird. Let's see what's going on here.
Well, developing this morning in the South Bay, San Jose leaders will debate new cannabis regulations. And it comes as dispensary owners there say the city falls short on protecting them from crime.
Today in the Bay's Chris Sanchez joins us in our newsroom. And Chris, this is a real sticking point for cannabis providers.
Listen, they are legitimate businesses and they say that they should be protected as such. The city's legitimate and licensed cannabis businesses say that they are being targeted by criminals and they're not getting the protection that other businesses get, which they say their fees pay for. This video is a glaring example. If you have a moment to take a look at your screen, you'll see burglars loading stolen goods from the exotic dispensary into an SUV there. You see several SJPD patrol cars arrive there on the scene. You can see the flashing lights, but the officers don't interact with the thieves. The thieves just drive away. A San Jose spokesperson, police spokesperson, says that department policy does not allow officers to try to stop or arrest the suspects on the spot for burglary unless there is a threat to the community or officers. A San Jose Spotlight reporter who broke this story with this video told us about the impact of these kinds of crimes.
Some say that they are getting close to closing. We've already seen 2 dispensaries in San Jose close their doors. That's 2 out of 16, and a lot of them are struggling.
As you heard her say, there are only 16 permitted businesses in San Jose. Each of them pay more than $139,000 per year in fees. Oakland's more than 200 businesses pay between $500 and about $17,000 a year. San Francisco's 100 businesses pay $5,000 per activity or permit. Now, because of the costs of regulation, the licensed dispensaries in San Jose say their prices are higher, which is driving customers back into the illegal pot market, defeating the purpose of having legitimate businesses in the city. Today, the discussion will center on whether to align city policies with the state, which could bring down the age for purchasing medicinal marijuana down to 18 instead of 21 in San Jose. It could also loosen San Jose's requirements for ID verification and secure storage of the marijuana. State requirements also require businesses to be monitored by an alarm company and require video surveillance to be stored longer, which could add even more to the business cost. Aligning with the state is the discussion today. Next month, the discussion will center on whether the San Jose police should be in charge of regulating retailers in the future.
No.
We have reached out to the organization that represents the legal dispensaries. We'll let you know what they have to say when they answer.
They're too high to pick up the phone.
Sean, hello, paging Sean.
A little bit of shade thrown at people who smoke weed here, when they decide to respond.
Of course, just a touch of shade. Anyway, this has been a contentious item and issue in San Jose ever since medicinal marijuana was approved. San Jose did, through the efforts of actually Councilmember Oliverio, as I recall, get out in front of the issue and was prepared, I think, a little better than most cities for the onset of legalization. But as you can see, it's quite a big chunk of change that they have to flickering lights, that they have to dole out these businesses just to stay afloat and stay open in San Jose, just to get permitted and licensed. And as you heard, there's only 16 licensed dispensaries in San Jose because they've just made a decision to keep it limited and to make it really onerous to do. So that's why you've got a limited supply of legitimate businesses. And it's also why, as you heard, you're hearing people going back to the quote unquote black market because they might be getting better costs there after all the taxes are added in. So I still shop at the dispensaries. I do note that it's a substantial amount I'm paying beyond the price of the goods I'm buying. I accept that. I do hope that my tax dollars are going to good use, right? But as I know from following city government, they're not always going to good use. But regardless, it's money that the city does desperately need to balance their budget. So without that money, there would be a deeper hole in the city budget. But that's the city's problem. It's not for me, it's not a dispensary problem. It's a city problem.
So the one thing that was interesting is like they need secure places to keep their product. Like, why would the city have to mandate that? You'd think that this stuff, because they, first of all, when they buy it, I think they pay some taxes on the front end. So if some of it gets stolen, it's probably going to be pretty hard to recover those taxes. So not only did you lose the product, you lost the taxes you paid on it.
Yeah,
but then you can't sell it. Like, and so like there's no, there's that regulation is dumb. I think that's like some save the children shit, right? Where, if you don't have it in a fucking, some fucking industrious kid's going to come break into your low quality safe. No, they're not.
Yeah. No, it absolutely is. It's actually it's, I won't say racist, but it's one of those situations where they're criminalizing an entire population, or they're criminalizing an industry, right? And they're making it out like, if you don't secure your weed, you're creating this public hazard, because you're
like an attractive nuisance, like a
an attractive nuisance, right? Yeah, you're an attractive nuisance, and who knows? One day, if it's not secure, you could have these armed, thugs and hooligans who flash mob bomb, Nordstrom in San Francisco, right? They can come into a dispensary and shoot it up and kill people and steal the weed, right? And that's going to happen, right? As if a lot of this stuff wouldn't happen at any other business where they're moving, expensive or relatively expensive material, jewelers, banks, whatever, but no one's going to put it on them to pay more, right? To exist, and no one's going to require them. Like they're not going to tell a bank like how to secure the money that's in their bank, right? I don't even think there are any regulations like that that the city at least has. So it's a little ridiculous to, I think, to require the regulations they put on them, in addition to all the tax money too, which is not helpful to their bottom line. So it's not a good scene. It needs to improve, but there's just not enough political will for it to improve, unfortunately. So a lot of it's going to come down, I think, to the cannabis industry, pushing, ballot measures and other kinds of lobbying efforts to change the law, without, relying on the council getting proactive in doing something. And the council doesn't want to do anything to help because they don't want to be seen as, pot friendly, even though it's all legal ostensibly now and legitimate, quote unquote, and should be acceptable behavior, at least as much as alcohol is, right? But it's not. It's still second class. It's still Schedule 1, right? It's still a narcotic, and it's still a just say no kind of mentality. And that's why you have all these regulations in the first place on this industry, is because people just flat out don't understand it. Most people who haven't been in it don't understand it. And from my perspective, frankly, entire council could do with taking a big fat rip and chilling out and thinking things through a little bit more. But I don't know that any of them ever have.
So unless people send me money during my streams specifically to purchase weed for delivery, I refuse to spend money on that shit. So I don't have a dog in this fight anyway. Like, I know enough fucking people that I don't remember the last time I bought weed with my own money. I think the last time I got weed delivered or paid for it, somebody in the chat, I was like, I'm out of weed. They're like, you should get some delivered. I'm like, I ain't paying for that. And they're like, now you are. And they gave me $100. I'm like, all right, cool. I guess I am.
Game on. Again, and that's what's gonna, the fact that you can do that, and that you could, if you wanted to, like, if you wanted to buy it, you'd have plenty of other options there too, I'm sure, right? You wouldn't necessarily have to ring up Khaliva or MedMen or whoever else is out there now. I don't even know. I'm
a celebrity in Reading. I could probably just go up there and leave with more weed than fits in my backpack.
Oh, I sense a road trip coming. You gotta cut the councilman on that.
I'd take Amtrak up there. You take Capitol Corridor up to Sacramento. That's probably a great trip, actually.
I'll go. I'll help you. Get rid of the product in case we're raided.
So we're going to move on
anyway.
we're going to move on over to San Francisco here with the next story. Apparently this $22 burrito doesn't have any weed in it.
That's what I've heard, but I don't buy that. So that's sort of why it's the next story. I think there's something going on here that we're not privy to.
The first thing you notice when you walk into La Vaca Birria is not the crowd of people or the colorful items on the wall. It's the smell of the food. When you walk in here, does it always smell this amazing?
Yes, either like birria or charcoal. Tengo todos que van a ir saliendo ahorita.
For the last 2 years, Ricardo Lopez has operated this spot built out of a former record store in the Mission. His vision has been to make the kind of food his aunts, uncles, and mother used to make, but kicked up a notch. The only problem is the price of nearly everything he uses to make his food has gone up, like onions, for example.
Before COVID, they were like $9 a sack at Restaurant Depot. I used to pick them up. During COVID and after, it was $40. Right now, it's $80.
And this is the signature burrito here. Nearly every ingredient that goes into it has doubled in cost, and that's the reason why the owner says so has its price. In fact, the latest consumer price index shows prices for food, gas, and housing all rose last month nationwide. To be fair, Lopez has also made a conscious decision to buy premium beef to make his birria, which is Mexican marinated beef, and he chooses not to buy any prepared foods from suppliers. Everything is made from scratch, with the exception of the tortillas, which he gets from a local shop. And all that effort is also reflected in the prices.
The food, you make in your pueblo back, in Mexico, it's very labor intensive. And the only way you get that here is at these fine dining restaurants, doing everything from scratch.
Judging from the lunch rush we saw, his decision not to skimp on ingredients or cut staff seems to be paying off. The customers we talk with say they've noticed the higher prices, but they're okay with that for now.
If it just takes, us as consumers to pay a little bit more to support people's dreams and get, really good food back, then that's fine with me.
And Lopez says he knows people can choose to go to the burrito shop a few doors down for a $9 option, which he says is good too. And for regulars who have decided to cut back, things are pricey and they're like, I can't come all the time. Are you okay with that?
I have to be,
What's he going to do, kill him?
Or keep the price the same, don't make any money, and we close our doors at one point.
In San Francisco, Sergio Quintana, NBC, Bay Area News.
I got to try that $22 burrito. If people choose that over the fucking $11 burrito or the $9 burrito around the way, that must be one hell of a fucking burrito.
I would hope so. I mean, I'm very, very much down with birria. And if he's doing the quality meats, that would make all the difference, honestly. The rest of the ingredients, more than likely, good, but it's probably the meat that makes it all come together, and that's probably one of the biggest drivers of the price too. For him, the cost and then the price for us. So yeah, maybe you and I can maybe split one. I go Dutch because I'm a little strapped these days.
Yeah, me too. I stream for a living, friend. What do you think?
Maybe the chat can kick us $22
or 44, and we could each get our own burrito like regular people.
Or 144, and we can get some weed too to go with it.
Yeah, chat seems to think that if you heard this burrito is amazing, dropping $22 on it, even if you just do it once to see how good it is. I mean, if it's like,
we'll definitely take a video and post it for sure. We've got to gram that shit.
So we're going to stay in San Francisco for our next story. San Francisco residents have just installed like a guerrilla land barrier.
So down lane barrier. I love it. This is great. This is sort of reminiscent. It's not the same. It's not the place you'd think where we were talking. We've been talking before about the barricades that the city put up to combat the shall we say the legal sex industry. This is something entirely different where a neighborhood has stepped up to do their own thing with traffic control.
New this midday, a dangerous stretch of road in San Francisco is still unaddressed years after a deadly crash and promises for safety improvements. So now neighbors are taking road safety into their own hands. ABC 7 News reporter Ryan Curry has the latest from Franklin Street.
White lanes and traffic barriers. It looks like something the city put up, but it's not. This was installed by San Francisco residents.
The street is, as you can see, it's so many cars, drivers go really fast on it sometimes and get really dangerous.
The goal is to shrink the lanes on Franklin Street so drivers slow down.
What's happening here is that these soft flex posts, and they reduce the width of the street from 3 lanes to 2 lanes, and so there's less space for cars, and so they go a little slower.
SFMTA and city leaders promised to make safety changes here back in 2021 after Andrew Zeman, a school teacher, was hit and killed while walking to his job at Sherman Elementary. More than 2 years have passed, and the city hasn't done anything. These residents are tired of waiting.
They had the design already, it's still all ready, and they've kind of backed off from installing it, probably for political reasons. And a bunch of community members said, no, they really want to see this happen. They want to see the street get safer.
This road diet stretches about a block and a half. Public Works now has to come in and unscrew and remove all of these cones on the road. And this paint is permanent paint, according to some of the police on scene. It could take hours or even days to get it fixed. We reached out to SFMTA and we're waiting to hear back. These residents understand doing this is illegal, and they're ready for the repercussions. They say the goal is to send a message to the city.
Sometimes you have to have really hard conversations with yourself and, with others in your community about what is right, how do we stand up for what is right, and how do we balance that with what the laws are. And sometimes what is right is not always what is legal.
In San Francisco, Ryan Curry, ABC 7 News.
What the fuck? What street was that?
I didn't catch, but yeah. So rogue citizens painting the street and putting up plastic bollards. This is so San Francisco, it kind of like hurts, right?
So I don't mean to be like cold or whatever, but if there was
go for it.
But every once in a while there's going to be like a traffic and pedestrian collision in a city, a busy city.
Yes.
And if it's been several years in this area since the last one, I feel like that's pretty safe, actually. Pretty safe.
Well, the vision is zero. That's the whole message around the campaigns, the safety campaigns, is vision zero. The idea that you'll have 0 major injuries or fatalities from car versus people collisions. But as you point out, I don't know that. It would be interesting to find out from the folks who came up with the Vision Zero moniker. Was there a thought that that's actually achievable, or is that more like sort of an aspirational kind of a name that just sounds good, right? Because we're going to say Vision 2.3 per year. But I think you're right that in any kind of environment like we create in our cities these days, you're going to have pedestrian or people versus vehicle or automobile or train even collisions, and you're just going to have to deal with the repercussions of that. You can't protect everyone, and sometimes accidents are simply accidents or freak occurrences, shall we say, and not some sort of pattern of dangerous behavior or threat.
Yeah, and I don't know. I wonder if these are the same people who would have freaked the fuck out if they were going to be like, we're going to make this 2 lanes now, but we're going to put a bike lane in. And one of the car lanes was these same people be the same ones that were freaking out.
Right. I don't know. I mean, the concept they were touting, or at least the young lady was touting who was, standing in the street and talking about doing illegal things. Civil disobedience is what I think she was searching for. She strikes me, she was saying using the same language you use for those situations, the road diets, quote unquote, when you bring in the bike lanes as well. So I have a feeling she'd be on board, but at the same time, it seems like this is not so much about improving access for all types of travel, right, and travel options, but more protecting residents and neighbors, and maybe just slowing down traffic on their street because they just want it slowed down.
So up next, this is great. This every once in a while we really cross the streams here. This is Crossing the Streams with our Occults and Satanic Panic show. I had no idea that there was apparently somebody died during an exorcism in San Jose.
It was a number of years ago by my recollection, maybe not number, but because the pandemic's just thrown my memory completely for a loop. But it was at least a couple years ago that this happened, I believe, and now the case is actually coming to trial after a while. But the news hit will probably tell you it a lot better than I could tell you on the backstory. But very interesting, and yes, very, very much cults and satanic panic oriented. So I thought it was another great cross the streams moment.
We start with a heartbreaking case involving a little girl. 3 people are accused of killing her during an exorcism-like ritual in San Jose. Today, the next step in this gut-wrenching case. NBC's Ian Cole was the only reporter in the courtroom.
The 3-year-old's mother, uncle, and grandfather face felony charges of child abuse leading to death as prosecutors today began laying out evidence against them. Today, the preliminary hearing finally began in the case of a young girl killed in what police describe as an exorcism-like ritual back in 2021. She's only identified as Aurelie Doe. It happened inside a backyard church the family used to run. One of the lead investigators in the case took the stand to describe his interviews with the 3 defendants, seen here in video from past hearings. Cameras were not allowed in court today. He said the girl's mother, Claudia Hernandez, told him God had taken her child because Aurelie was possessed with a demon, adding that Claudia told the girl's uncle everything was going to be okay and we won't be found guilty for what we did, allegedly saying in that interview that she killed her daughter but did not mean to. The investigator also says the grandfather described how he held the girl tightly across his chest for 2 hours, saying the 3-year-old was acting like the girl in the movie The Exorcist. But the grandfather says it wasn't an exorcism, even though they were trying to rid her of being possessed. And none of the 3 tried any life-saving measures. Defense attorneys objected to certain lines of questioning, but will get their chance to cross-examine. The defendant's family was in court, but did not want to comment. Attorneys for all sides say they can't talk until it's over. But we spoke with lawyer Stephen Clark, who is not associated with this case, about why the preliminary hearing will be so detailed.
The DA wants to lay out their case because they need to show what each individual defendant did relative to the death of this young child. So it's important that this is just a probable cause hearing, but at the same time, this is setting the case up for trial.
The preliminary hearing is expected to last through next Tuesday, at which point the judge will decide if this case moves on to trial. In San Jose, Ian Cole, NBC, Bay Area News.
I get the feeling this is one of those things that the more we look into it, the darker and more fucked up it's going to get, right?
Yes, and there was some probing that happened at the time, but now that the trial's going down, because a lot of people were just hush-hush at the time because it was pending a criminal trial and investigation, and so the police weren't talking about it, the attorneys weren't talking about it. So there was a lot of mystery and a lot of mystery still surrounding it. But now that if it's going to trial, if it does go to trial, all the details will come out at some point. So we will hopefully get to learn more about what happened. But yeah, so far very sketchy and very shady and very down-ballot-y.
This sounds like the kind of thing that we could include on our list of things to do, like edited video essays for, where we kind of dig into it and get all the information and present it in a sensationalized way to get people to actually follow our fucking YouTube channel.
I mean, and at the end of the day, obviously we tend to shy away from morbidity. So obviously our hearts go out to the young girl and the victim in all of this. And her mom is obviously caught up in it, but at very least, for sure, we have a lot of respect, I'm sure, for the victim here. But we'll see what happened.
So, I'm just speculating here, but possessed by a demon, oftentimes that means the girl had some problems, I think.
Yeah.
Like they, you know what I'm saying, that were probably needed to be addressed in some sort of clinical way.
Sure. Could have been spectrum-y, could have been bipolar, schizophrenic, all sorts of possible answers. We'll find out more. Hopefully, they can go on more than just what her parents or her family said about what was possessing her. If maybe there's a school psychologist or someone who spoke to her and could give a little bit more information, or a doctor of some sort. But it is tragic for sure, and it's just. But the reason it's here is because I think it speaks to the type of thing we look to expose and uncover more about. So
as soon as I heard backyard church, I'm like, okay, there's some fucking shit going on here. There's some shit going on here that basically we're probably going to be the best ones to cover it because it's just hell of satanic panicky, very satanic panicky.
Yeah, folding chairs in the shed in the backyard in your church. So yeah, pass the hat.
Very much like an episode of the X-Files. Anyway, we're going to move on to get your shit together. It seems like in the Tenderloin, some of the residents are trying to sue the city over the Tenderloin being the Tenderloin. Let's see what the local news has to say about this.
San Francisco's Tenderloin neighborhood is at the heart of the narrative about the city: drugs, homelessness, crime.
But neighbors say who live there that it's much more than just that. They believe the city is treating the Tenderloin as kind of what they describe as a containment zone, and now they're actually suing the city. ABC 7 News reporter Luz Pena is here in studio with the details. Hi, Luz.
Hi, that's right. San Francisco is officially in the middle of two lawsuits, one by the Coalition on Homelessness and now by a group of Tenderloin residents and businesses who are accusing the city of tolerating illegal drug dealing and a growing number of homeless encampments. San Francisco woke up to a lawsuit by 5 residents and 2 businesses in the Tenderloin, the city's drug market hotspot.
That are at their wits' end because the city has treated their neighborhood as a containment zone for narcotics activity and all the problems associated with that.
Matthew Davis represents the Tenderloin residents who want to remain anonymous. In the complaint, one of the plaintiffs, a mother of 2, documented being threatened with knives and hammers outside her home. These photos showing a glimpse of their daily lives.
Every day at all hours, people are dealing drugs and using drugs in front of their apartment building. There are encampments. People are lighting bonfires. Their sidewalks are filthy with all types of problems, from used syringes to human waste.
The Phoenix and Best Western hotels documented inaccessible sidewalks for guests and drug use throughout the area. The Phoenix Hotel decided not to renew their lease next year.
The business is down so much because of the conditions around their hotel.
Randy Shaw, director of the Tenderloin Housing Clinic, is hoping this lawsuit leads to change in the area.
We hope we get our constitutional rights protected, which has not been the case, and the people should not treat the Tenderloin as if, oh, you wanted to sell drugs, you can do it in the Tenderloin, but don't do it in Cow Hollow.
In response to the lawsuit, in a statement, the city attorney's office said, in part, the city is making efforts to reduce crime, disrupt open-air drug markets, and address homelessness, all while complying with the preliminary injunction issued in the Coalition on Homelessness case. The mayor said they're seeing improvements in the Tenderloin at UN Plaza in the daytime, but at night it's still an issue.
And we're going to continue to do everything we can to work as aggressively as we can to focus our resources and attention on the Tenderloin.
We met Melvin Jr. in the neighborhood. He has lived in the Tenderloin for 20 years and was glad to hear that a group of residents are suing the city. He doesn't feel safe in the area anymore.
It's horrible now. Just yesterday, someone pulled a knife on me while I was walking home from work, for no apparent reason at all.
And these residents and businesses are not seeking any financial compensation from the city. They just want the courts to intervene and help the Tenderloin. The city has about a month to respond to this lawsuit. Luz Pena, ABC 7 News.
So, I don't know, there are probably many fans of The Wire in our audience. This reminds me of The Wire when they did you probably remember it, when Bunny put up the free zone. They called it Hamsterdam, where they took all the dope dealers and everybody and put them in like a zone that was like surrounded by the fucking police, and the only rule was no violence, and the police would not intervene otherwise. I think these people just watching The Wire too much.
Probably. I mean, life imitates art, imitates life, right? Yeah, it's interesting to hear. It's like the residents who are filing the suit, I don't know if they necessarily can relate to the folks that are, living on their streets and their neighbors that are unhoused and doing the drugs. It sounds like they're more concerned about the fact that those folks are there and that there's more of them coming. They see as or they're being forced to come there or contained there, and all of that is seen to them as blight. That seems to be the perspective of the folks that filed the suit, right? But there's also plenty of folks that they spoke to and out there who are just sick of the city kind of leaving it alone, right, and letting it fester, because it benefits the city to have, just like anyone, to have a foil, right? To have, especially if you're an elected official, it benefits anyone to have a foil or a counterpoint or an opponent or an enemy, right? that you can, always point to the boogie monster. You can always point to and say that's the thing, right? I'm going to clean that up, but you never actually do, right? And in fact, you might even perpetuate the problem because then it's always a problem, right? Why do the Republicans can always just talk shit about the things that don't happen because they don't let them happen, right? They don't bring the bills forward, and so those things don't happen. And then later they say, well, Democrats don't want these things to happen. It's like, no, you don't even want to talk about them. And that's kind of how this strikes me. And again, at the end of the day, I don't think this and anything the city is doing with regard to the Tenderloin is helping anybody, right? It's helping anyone who is on the street get off the street, or on drugs get off of drugs, or get on better drugs, or less drugs. So it's we'll see what happens with the lawsuit. I don't think it's going to move the city to do anything unless the judge actually finds for the plaintiffs, as it were.
So that hotel shutting down might be good though, because you can turn that into some temporary transitional housing for some people. Maybe there's some action that could go on there. That'd be pretty good, because then those people get to stay in the TL. But then the fucking neighbors would complain that you're housing them, and it's like, well, they're not. That's the same people that you're complaining about being on. I already know how this would go down, right? They're like, oh, transitional housing. We're going to do transitional housing here. The same people that are complaining about those people being on the street are going to be like, no, don't put that here. And it's like, well, what?
Right. And it's what you're hearing in San Jose, frankly, right now is, oh, well, shit. Now everyone's all about, safe camping sites and, tiny homes and, what are they? Shipping container, housing, basically. Everyone's all for it now because, it's now they can see people encamped across the street from their house in Almaden, across the street from their house in the Rose Garden, under the freeway in the Willow Glen, right? They can see it every day, and it's confronting them, and they don't like it. It's dirty and filthy, and these people need to be somewhere else. Okay, so we're going to build a camp, a safe camping site, or we're going to allow safe RV parking in your neighborhood. Oh, fuck. I didn't realize they were going to be here. You're here? You're talking about, oh, sorry. Yeah, no, I didn't have any vision of that. What about those guys over there? Like that neighborhood? Could you go over there with your
it's
crimes?
It's crazy. This you're like you're saying, this isn't going to do anything to help anybody. These people are just frustrated, and they could, I could see that. I suppose, like, you'd see being frustrated with your neighborhood. Maybe some of it is like, my neighborhood is the butt of national jokes now, and I don't want it to be this way. There are all kinds of things going on here, but like, I don't know, like, they're like, we're going to sue you, and the judge is going to make you fix this problem. No, that's what's not going to happen.
Right. I mean, even if you won, or I just don't see how there's any sort of resolution here. And again, the city can do just what the city attorney. I'm amazed the city attorney had anything to say, period, about this at the time. But they just pointed out, the city's doing everything they can on all these fronts and trying to improve, and just basically making the case before the case needs to be made that there's really no standing here. There's no meat to the case. Because it really comes down to perception, frankly. When the city can point to budget line items, paying for certain programs, and saying, we're addressing this, right? It may not be successful or as successful as you would like, but we're addressing it. And if they can prove that, then there's really no standing for you to go to court and say they're not doing it. But the court of public opinion is elections. So fucking run. Run for office. You don't like it? Run.
Yeah, I just... this one just feels like the people who are struggling are like a prop in someone else's crusade, and I hate those situations the most.
Oh man, dude, you just described, I think, half the clips and shows, or half the stories we have on this show, right? Constantly, especially because this is local, especially because these stories are going to fall through the cracks and generally get one hit on the local news, right? And that's it. They won't cover it. We'll try and hunt it down, right? But they won't cover it again. And it happens more at the local level than the national level, right? These problems are allowed to fester. You see these 30, 40-year politicians who are in a school board, or they're on the city council, and they leave the city council for 4 years and come back to the city council. Why didn't they try to run for something higher? Because they're a big fish in a small pond, and they realize they can be as corrupt as they want and do all the crimes they want at the local level because no one's paying attention. And even if they do find out and you get in trouble, you can rebuild your reputation and turn it around on a dime and be a completely different person because there's no institutional memory either. So that's why I think it's important to have folks like us, and also, I give it the spotlight and others who are covering what's going on at the local level because no one else is talking about it, and they wouldn't be talking about it without us.
Also, while we're here, shout out to Broke-Ass Stewart, who does a really good job of covering San Francisco news and politics from a very personal and very relatable point of view as a citizen, a longtime citizen of San Francisco, and somebody who loves the city of San Francisco. And very, very good person to follow. So we're going to move on to Down Ballot Watch because there were some elections recently, and it looks like this is something where you're going to have to kind of carry this next one here. What's going on with the Alum Rock School District Board?
Shit, what isn't going on with the Alum Rock School District Board? We've had, I think, stories recently about the Alum Rock School District, which is in East San Jose, mostly in City Council District 5. But some of our more impoverished, neglected, underserved communities are in this district. So it's constantly challenged in a lot of ways. And recently it's been challenged by enrollment problems, enrollment drops and declines for a variety of reasons. A lot of kids are having to leave the area because their families can't find work here or can't afford to live here and still work here and now commute from as far away as Los Banos or San Juan Bautista because they need affordable housing. You also have a lot of kids that are moving over to the charter system because that is an option that's presented to them. And if they can pass muster and pass the screening that charters put on students, they can get in there and hopefully, from their perspective, their parents' perspective, get a better education than they're getting in the traditional public school. Even though a charter kind of acts like a private school in a public school system, they get public funding, but they are selective. They're allowed to be selective, and they're really targeted towards results. And then there's also a number of students who end up in the private system because their parents can't afford it. Not a lot in this particular area, but the ones who can are already in that system. And so the Alum Rock District has seen drastically declining enrollment. That has led to talk about closing schools. That always leads to parent, unrest and community unrest. And that's all well and good because that's what happens when you talk about closing someone's school. It's a very visceral thing. Unfortunately, the superintendent that they have had recently, she seems to see community engagement and meaningful community engagement and her board as nuisances, and seems to prefer to be able to do her own thing a lot of the times. And that's rubbed enough people the wrong way that now even her own board that was supportive of her for many years is now kind of turning a different way, and actually turning quite drastically a different way. And we're going to find out more in this hit from NBC Bay Area. Hopefully I've set that up.
Well, there's a lot of buzz and questions today after two unexpected decisions by a South Bay school board. Last night, San Jose's Alum Rock School District voted to reject a proposal to relocate hundreds of students. Then the board terminated the contract of the superintendent who was recommending that relocation. As NBC Bay Area's Damon Trujillo explains, the firing caught even the board president by surprise.
The news sent shockwaves throughout the Alum Rock School District, parents and teachers in disbelief. The question they have is, now what? She led the Alum Rock School District through some tumultuous times, mainly dealing with the pandemic in a district with some of the highest rates of infections and least amount of resources.
I feel she did a good job.
But at last night's board meeting, to the surprise of many, the board voted 3-2 to terminate the contract of Superintendent Dr. Eladia Bauer.
When it's sudden decisions like this, it's when it's, for me personally, more tough.
The board president says she was among those caught off guard by the decision.
You were surprised by the motion?
Absolutely.
The decision was made the same night that the board voted against Dr. Bauer's recommendation to close the middle school at Aptitude Community Academy at Goss. No reason was given for the termination, only that Dr. Bauer will be given 10 days of leave. The decision has left some parents concerned and confused.
It's sad to see someone that did, their part for the district, not just the district, for the students, for everybody, and for her to be gone, it's kind of sad because who are we going to get?
You want her back?
Que regrese. Sí, que regrese porque
This parent says yes, she wants Dr. Bauer back. In a statement, the Alum Rock Educators Association said this is quite a surprise, and Alum Rock Educators Association is taken aback by the timing of this board decision. However, the teachers union also said there were signs the district needed a fresh start. Tonight, the board president is trying to put concerned parents and students at ease.
They can be assured that our district, continues to run as is. We have amazing staff and teachers and administrators at the schools that will continue to work as they have been.
A nationwide search will soon get underway for Dr. Bauer's replacement. That person will face some immediate challenges, including a dramatic decline in student enrollment and a $20 million budget deficit next school year. Red ink that could mean the future closure of as many as half a dozen schools. In San Jose, Damian Trujillo, NBC Bay Area News.
So I'm getting big "you pissed somebody off" vibes here. Like I'm getting big something happened personally that pissed off a couple of the people that voted to remove this person as the superintendent.
Could be. I think that there's definitely some, ego driving things here. And the board probably just felt more and more slighted over time. Kind of like the jilted lover. The board is supposed to be in charge. The board of a school district, the superintendent works for them. And oftentimes, though, the superintendents will, try to run roughshod over the board, or many, run things themselves and run their own program and try and keep the board on a short leash and feed them the information they want, feed them the background information they want, the stories and narratives they want to further their own narrative, and thereby keeping the boards pretty much neutralized. And I think that worked to some extent with Dr. Bauer, but she'd been in the district for quite a long time, and in situations like that, eventually, things can have the tendency to unravel because the more you weave that kind of web, the more you push your board members aside and you do your own thing, and you don't respect that relationship you have with them, and then the relationship that they have with the public as elected officials. Then you're walking a really fine line. And you were risking. All it takes is on a 5-person board is 1 or 2 people turning on you, right? She probably had a solid 3-2 majority on the board supporting her, and all it took was just one board member feeling slighted, who was in her camp, and that was enough to turn the tide. So I don't think it was anything. Yeah. So but not necessarily like in any sort of personal. They would take it personally, but more just in a professional and community representative kind of a way. But that's exactly what did happen. And, but it might've been a long time coming, from my perspective.
So something that close to both of us for different reasons. You, I believe, attended the campaign event for Evan Lowe. And, I lived in Campbell when Evan Lowe was the mayor of Campbell. And at the time I was the mayor of Campbell Avenue. So we were like colleagues in a way. So,
mayors of major cities.
Looks like the race for the 16th congressional district for second place is too close to call. I think I predicted that Sam Liccardo would walk away with first place.
I believe you did. So, hold on really quick.
That was the easiest thing in the world to predict.
Yes. Very well done. And he is. But yeah, the real battle is for second place. And because it doesn't really matter who, how much the first place guy gets, or gal, gets, whoever's in the top 2 go through to November. So right now you've got a very, very intense battle, very close battle for second place. And we're going to learn a little bit more about where things stood a few days ago, because there's no new video yet, but we can give you an update on the other side of where things stand as of tonight.
It's more evidence that every vote counts. The runoff race to replace Congresswoman Anna Eshoo is still not decided. Former San Jose Mayor Sam Liccardo is the top vote getter, so he'll be on the November runoff ballot. But the gap between second and third place separated by less than 750 votes, and those votes are still coming in. NBC Bay Area's Damian Trujillo is at the registrar's office with the race that is still too close to call.
It's a race to decide who will face off against Sam Liccardo in November's presidential election. It's a cross-county race, and right now Evan Lowe is in third place, slightly behind in San Mateo County, but now slightly ahead in Santa Clara County. The elections workers are still at it, removing ballots from the envelopes, verifying signatures. And in this restricted room in San Jose, they're counting all the votes that are still coming in.
The elections are not over. We're in our high peak time of making sure we get all the election results counted in time for certification.
And it seems most everyone on the peninsula and in the South Bay is closely watching this race for second place in the 16th Congressional District. At last count, Santa Clara County Supervisor Joe Simitian leads Assemblyman Evan Lowe by roughly 749 votes.
That's why every vote counts.
The winner gets to move on to a November runoff. But with such a close race, political observers are eager to see if the losing candidate will request and pay for a recount.
Any consultant worth their salt will let them know that a race this close requires immediate attention of lawyers, immediate, to begin the process, because a race this close can be won at recount.
In a statement, Evan Lowe told us, "To me, no matter the ultimate outcome, the closeness of this race shows that your vote truly matters. Your vote can have a real impact on who represents your community." Simitian said, "This is an important reminder that every vote counts.
So the same
every vote
statement
must be counted.
Yes. Same consultant, maybe?
One day at a time. I
No,
am pleased to be
no,
in the top two, as I have been every day since Election Day." Meanwhile, the counting continues.
We tend to see that folks who are more liberal tend to come out later, and so their votes tend to get processed later. So as we get down to the last ballots, we might continue to see that uptick.
Ballots in Santa Clara County had to be postmarked by March 5th and can arrive no later than today. The county will certify its election results on April 2nd. Then we will see if the results are final or if the 16th congressional race goes into a recount. Damian Trujillo, NBC Bay Area News.
So you said you have an update on this, and I see it in my notes here.
Yeah, there's a link to the current standings, as it were. So that was it from a few days back. Evan Lowe did manage to completely close the gap, and in fact went ahead in one count late last week by as much as 59 votes. The next day, it swung back the other way. Joe Simitian went ahead by 44 votes. And then ever since then, Evan has been whittling away in every single update to the point where now, as of tonight, the difference in a race where we're talking like hundreds of thousands of votes, it's down to 2 votes. Evan Lowe is up on Joe Simitian by 2 whole votes, which is pretty impressive. And there's actually less than 100 ballots left to count total. So it's anybody's game. And most of the ballots left are in San Mateo County, that portion of the district. And that's where Evan did not do as well as he did in Santa Clara County. That being said, in the current cohort of votes that they are counting, as the parlance goes, he has been trending well. So if it's still the same type of votes that they're counting, which are pretty much the last minute votes, the provisional ballots, the folks who maybe don't vote regularly or just had some issue with their ballot where they didn't sign it, or someone else signed it for them, like dad signed it for the kid, or whatever it is, or they couldn't match up signatures at the registrar's office. There are still opportunities for those folks to what they call cure their ballots and sign an affidavit that says, yeah, that's my ballot, that was my vote. So that's still happening right now, and those are a lot of the votes that are left to be counted. And it is yet to be seen, how those are going to swing, and it could really go either way. But at this point, it's so close that while it doesn't trigger, unfortunately, an automatic recount, whoever's behind is more than likely going to decide to try to raise the money and pay for the recount. It's going to cost a shit ton of money to do it. So you want to be ahead. Even if it's by 1 vote, you want to be the one ahead.
Right, because you're not spending the money.
Correct. Because you're, oh yeah, fine, let's go ahead, pay for it. That's fine. Because if they don't, then you win. So you're in complete control, even if you're only up by 1 vote. So Evan's up by 2. And we'll see what happens in the final tallies from San Mateo County, but it's entirely possible this is just that razor thin
no matter who ends up on top. And I think it will go to a recount. I think whoever loses is definitely going to pay for it because they've come this far. So they'll raise the money. They'll find the way to do it. And that's a small enough margin where a recount could swing the election, because it's really the system is good enough. The machines are good enough. The humans are good enough that, generally speaking, from what I am told, a dozen votes one way or the other is probably worth recounting. Anything beyond that, probably not going to change the final result. So there you go.
That's great. This will be something to keep an eye on. Do you know, is the recount just run through the machines again, or do they have to do it by hand, or is there anything different about the recount, like in California?
My understanding is that they can, they have to run they run through the same process as as the ballot was originally, right?
Gotcha.
So, but they can run the machine count, but they still have to, now I guess now that they verified signatures, more than likely they can just run the ballots through the machine, and then do a spot check. They probably, I think they might have to do a percentage by hand.
Oh yeah,
right,
yeah.
Just as a spot check. But yeah, they do run them through the machine. I guess the machine again. But it could be. Don't quote me. It could be that the recounter gets to decide like what kind of recount they want. Right? Maybe if they pay a little more, they can get an automatic, manual recount of all the ballots. Right, as opposed to a machine recount, because it would obviously cost a lot more in terms of time to count them by hand. So it could be an option to them. I don't know if that's the case or not.
What I'm going to say is this is good because in this case, it seems like the whoever Liccardo's challenger is coming out of this is going to have some kind of momentum from just the recount being in the news, and they get more name recognition locally out of it, I think. So
yeah, absolutely. I think that it would certainly benefit Evan a lot, and the coverage is certainly benefiting him a lot because he had the most name ID to build in other parts of the district beyond like Campbell, right? And to some extent West San Jose, but mostly in Campbell. That was his base where people really knew him. Even though he's been in the assembly, his old assembly district, and then the one that he was redistricted into really don't have much overlap at all with this congressional district. So he was, starting from scratch to some extent, except for Campbell. So Joe Simitian would have a little more name ID going in and is more of an establishment character and figure. But I think Evan would benefit a lot more from this sort of protracted race if he were to go through. And I think Sam Liccardo should know that Evan would be a much more formidable opponent for him, I think, than Joe Simitian. I think that there are a variety of ways that that Sam could outflank Joe Simitian, since they're just two white dudes going at it. But there's a lot of ways there, paths to victory. I don't know that there are as many paths to victory against Evan, because Evan can outflank Sam in a lot of ways that Sam just can't counter. So, and Evan also has support from really strong interests that would come to bear in that election. So.
I would like to see whichever one of these fellows comes out on top in this endorse the other. I would like to see something there. Like,
I think that would be the case, just knowing where they both come from politically. I think that will definitely, but certainly it's likely. It's more likely than either of them endorsing Liccardo. Let's just say that.
Right. And I just think it would make the person who lost look real good, because it was so close. They could be like, this was so close. It was a great battle. This other person ran a great campaign, and it was hard for us to go up against either of us to go up against Sam Liccardo because of the machine that's behind Sam Liccardo. So I am clearly and obviously endorsing this person who just won the recount.
Yeah, I'll say this about this particular showdown. If Evan were to win, the narrative will be that he overcame the political establishment and built a great had a great campaign that was based on great TV ads and digital content, and sort of a new kind of campaign that wasn't so field oriented or mail or direct mail oriented. That'll be the narrative. Young-ish, right? Upstart MC in the establishment. If he were to lose, there's really no loss there, because he was up against it. The odds were against him. No one did actually expect him. Not no one, but the establishment didn't expect him to be in the top two. So if he's in the top 2, great. It's a win for him. If he's not, it's no big loss. With Joe Simitian has been waiting for this race for years. And Eshu has been waiting for this for years to be able to retire and then endorse Joe and hopefully anoint him. And he's got, all those kind of establishment connections and endorsements. And he's been raising money for this race for a long time. So he had a war chest going in. So it was his race to lose. And so if he doesn't make the runoff, not even the runoff, right? Like, okay, maybe he loses in November, but if he can't even make the runoff, it's going to be a big hit to him politically. And not that he was going to have much of a career beyond this anyway. This would probably have been his last job in Congress, if he is to get it. There's still a political future in retirement. So it's going to be a hit to him if he doesn't make it through, let's just say, but not as much as it would be to Evan if he doesn't. And Evan has infinite possibilities when it comes to political and professional future. So he could do really whatever he wants after this, even though he's not going to go back to the assembly.
Okay, well, we're going to move on to another one that's fucking razor thin. It's Prop 1. And you and I came down on different sides of Prop 1, but for I'll say lukewarm reasons. There was no major disagreement. Yeah. Everybody was expecting a drag out last week between me and the councilman over Prop 1.
Yeah, no, I think we each could have flipped a coin in terms of our final vote, right? Like, I think I completely see the pros of the measure, but the cons for me outweighed. So, but
I mean, it was like fucking 51-49 for me as far as pros and cons.
That's exactly what the final vote says right now, right? We're looking at a razor thin margin of a couple hundred votes out of, this is like 6 million votes. So this is insane how close this is. Anyway, we're going to find out more about what's happening there and how the supporters and opponents feel about potential recount in this race.
It's been more than a week since California's primary election. Some races are still too close to call, including the only state ballot measure, that's Proposition 1. Here are the latest numbers. A $6 billion bond measure promises to build 10,000 shelter beds for the homeless and people who have addiction and mental health issues. And as those votes are still being tallied, Tom Wade has a look at why Prop 1 may just barely pass.
California's homeless crisis was center stage in last week's election, with Prop 1 on the ballot. The measure would massively overhaul how the state manages the homeless crisis. The governor, LA Mayor Karen Bass, LA County Sheriff Robert Luna, and other top state leaders went all in trying to convince voters to pass it. But as of now, the race is much tighter than supporters were hoping for.
Well, it shows that Californians don't necessarily trust the state government to spend their money wisely. This doesn't involve an immediate expenditure of tax revenue, but it's billions of dollars in bond money, and voters understand that bond money eventually has to be repaid.
The $6 billion bond promised 10,000
He had a Rudy Giuliani bumper sticker on his wall behind him.
shelter beds and services for the homeless,
and a haircut too,
and drug addicted.
Where's all this money already going if we're diverting it to the homeless problem?
Tamara Eichelberger, a college professor, is among the millions who voted no on Prop 1. She's critical of Newsom's handling of the homeless crisis.
It seems like we keep doing this over and over again and getting the same result, with money again being diverted to other things. So I feel like it should stay here in California and address some of our problems.
A group of healthcare advocates opposed to Prop 1 said it would divert billions away from critical homeless programs that are already in place and create medical incarceration. But supporters like Veronica Lewis with Hopix, a nonprofit in South LA that helps find housing and treatment for the homeless, says Prop 1 includes tools needed to battle today's homeless crisis.
So just think about if it was your loved one who had a severe mental illness and didn't have a place to get well and get services because they couldn't stabilize enough or couldn't be stationary enough to get those services, or one of your family members addicted to drugs and close to death because of it. This project, this program, and the reforms it'll bring and the shifting of some of the way that money is going to be used is literally saving lives.
Political experts say since Newsom became the face of Prop 1, it may have helped motivate his opposition enough to almost overcome a massive disparity in funding.
And what makes this actually a really interesting race is the overwhelming supply of money was on the yes side. A quick look at it's over 12 million, somewhere I think between about 12 and 15 million was spent to pass this thing. Virtually no money was raised on the no side.
Well, that just ended randomly.
Abruptly, yeah. It seems like I feel like stories do tend to on the local news just end very abruptly, especially when it's KPIX. I don't know what it is. Anyway, well, yeah, it's very, very close. Razor thin. Razor thin being 20,000 votes or whatever it was, 2,000 votes out of 6 point whatever million. So there more than likely is going to be a recount here, provided those proponents or opponents who are spending all that money they were just talking about can raise some more. Because as you can imagine, recounting 6 million votes costs a little bit more than recounting 200,000. So yeah.
If you notice the yes side, I think one of the reasons that a lot of people who didn't look into it might have voted no is just who they saw on the yes side, right? Like I bet this probably shakes out like a lot of things do on population density. Places in denser populations saw their elected leaders generally supporting this, and people in less dense populations did not see their local leaders supporting this. In fact, probably drove them to vote no when they saw that they don't even care who it is. They're like, that's the Los Angeles mayor. Fuck the Los Angeles mayor.
Are you able to share your screen by any chance? Because if anyone wants to look in the show notes, we can put it there. There's a link to the map in the comment that I have there.
Yeah, of course. This show is a screen share show.
There it is right there. So yes is green, red is no, and you can see, aside from some coastal counties up in Northern California, it's mostly urban, and then San Diego, of course, going red. It's mostly urban centers that are voting for this, right? And then the rural populations that are voting against it. So it does break down pretty much along those lines. For
that's how everything. That's how statewide propositions tend to break down in California.
They can. It used to be there was a certain northern southern divide. Northern being more progressive, liberal, whatever you want to call it, democratic, and then southern being more red, conservative. But yeah, it has shifted completely to where cities and urban centers are the progressive hotbeds, and then it's the rural areas that are the red zones.
Now we're going to move on to Recall Watch. They're trying to recall the DA in Alameda County. Me being in southern Alameda County, almost into Santa Clara County, watching the people try to collect signatures was pretty funny, because they're like, we need to recall the county DA, and the most common response was, who is the Alameda County DA?
And what did they do to you?
Right.
So if you really enjoy, if you think it's funny so far, this story, I'll just let it run, is going to make you just laugh here until your giggles go home.
We begin with new developments in the effort to recall Alameda County District Attorney Pamela Price. Good evening. I'm Ryan Yamamoto. The county registrar has announced a manual count of the signatures submitted to put the recall to a vote. And as Dodd Lim reports, both supporters and opponents are claiming this as a victory.
The head of the elections office says they took a random sample of the signatures that were turned in, about 5%, but the result came back inconclusive. From the small sample, they could not be sure there were enough valid signatures, so now they'll manually hand count all of the signatures. This East Bay mother volunteered and collected signatures to recall District Attorney Pamela Price.
I'm okay with that delay for them to get it right.
Patricia Harris is used to waiting. In fact, she says she's still waiting for justice over the killing of her son, Jaron Purvis, who was working at Apple and getting his master's degree at the time of his death. She says the man convicted was released after serving 2.5 years.
Had Pamela Price not come in, we would have gotten some form of justice. There would have been some form of justice served. But when you take away a gun enhancement, you take away 10 years.
Harris and recall organizers accuse Price of being soft on crime. They turned in over 123,000 signatures earlier in the month. They need roughly 73,000 valid signatures to trigger a recall election. Opponents of the recall say this delay is good news for DA Price.
This is a major failure on the side of the folks that have been pushing this recall.
William Fitzgerald is the spokesman for Protect the Win campaign.
In their year-long campaign that, was there any there? And it's clear that there wasn't. It's clear that they're actually having trouble to meet the threshold.
Carl Chan, a recall organizer, is confident they'll have more than enough valid signatures.
Not only that we're not worried, we're actually celebrating that, the counting is about to be done. And so we can actually maybe saving some time, for any legal, claims that they can have.
While Price supporters say the DA is reforming the criminal justice system and holding people accountable, Harris says getting rid of Price would make Alameda County safer. She doesn't want another family to go through her pain.
His best friend's getting married in a couple of weeks. So we'll go to that, but we'll never see him get married. We'll never have grandkids by him. And that hurts.
The elections office has already started the counting process. They have 30 days. We should know the result by mid-April.
And the Price campaign is also demanding that the Secretary of State investigate the signatures over claims of fraudulent and deceptive collection efforts. In the March 5th primary, Alameda County voters passed a measure to reform how the city handles recall elections. Measure B will bring the process in line with state guidelines. It would eliminate the requirement that signature gatherers live in the county and changes the threshold needed to get a recall on the ballot.
So this process is actually like dumb. Like signature collecting is dumb. I have to with a pen, like while I'm on my way out of fucking Safeway, fit my full name, my address, and other information on this fucking sheet of paper that's on a clipboard.
In this tiny little space. Yeah. It's a mess. It's a complete mess. And then they have to go back, and what happens is you submit these things. You have to submit the petitions. In the county where you collected them, you can only have collected signatures from residents of that county. And then what they do at the registrar is like someone sits there and, or a computer at least, scans the signature on those petitions, matches it or tries to match it to the signature that's on file from their voter registration. And, if it doesn't match for whatever reason, spits it out, doesn't count it. But in this case, what happens is when you get the initial submission of signatures, it's pretty standard practice. The registrar or the clerk will take a random sample of, in this case, 5% of the signatures and try to validate them. And if you can't validate, they need a certain number of signatures, right? So if they can't validate enough out of that sample to say that, yeah, you're going to hit that threshold, then yeah, they have to do a manual count of every single one. And that's not good news for I don't care what the proponents say, that's not good news for them. It's definitely not good news. You want to just be able to pass on the initial inspection, because this raises the question that, yeah, maybe they did have a lot of fraudulent practices. Maybe there are a lot of bad signatures, and maybe they're not going to qualify at the end of the day. So I'd be quaking in my boots if I were them, especially if they spent a bunch of money to pay these people that you probably saw outside of Target or wherever, collecting signatures, right? They probably spent a ton of money on this. If it doesn't come through, they're going to have a lot of people to answer to who gave them money just to get it on the ballot, right? Like they don't even get it on the ballot. That's bad news.
So the other thing is that if they were unable to verify it on 5%, I mean, they got almost double what they needed. So that means that the 5% could just be like some anomaly where they grabbed a 5% sample that was just like a shit sample, and they did, most of it was above board and everything, and it's just the luck of the draw on that 5%. But that to make that assumption, you're making a lot of other assumptions. You almost have to assume a conspiracy against you, right? That they chose a bad sample on purpose or something, because just randomly pulling 5%, you're probably going to get something that closely approximates the other 95%.
Yeah, there'll be a margin of error, but in the past, if it passes muster, and if it's especially high percentage, if it's well and above what you're going to need on the threshold scale, then they'll forego the manual count. You typically with real professional signature gathering efforts, that's what you'll see. It's all been validated. What usually happens, and not to lengthen the show because we want to get to public comment, but what typically happens is these campaigns pay a lot of money to the signature gathering firms, not just to collect the signatures, but then to validate the signatures themselves before it goes to the registrar, before they submit. So you actually get, if you were working with professionals, you get a report of, oh, this is how many, we collected this many, this is how many were validated, right? So but they have to submit them. So, but in advance going in, okay, we have this many valid, we're in good shape, we're in bad shape. Yeah. And if you'll know before you submit, like, oh shit, we're not going to pass the test. You just wouldn't do it. You would start over, or you'd go back out and get more signatures, right?
So
So
I didn't observe it in person, but people who watch regularly know that there was a recall effort up in Shasta County, headed up by some people, maybe not the heads of it, but deeply involved were some of the people that have appeared on this very show. And they, just private citizens, were going through the entire time and validating the signatures. Like they would get the signatures, and they were from what I was hearing, that some of them were spending as much time making sure the signatures were right as they were out there gathering the signatures.
Sure.
And it's easier, I suppose, in a place like Shasta, and it looks like the recall is like razor thin, and it looks like the guy might beat the recall, but they had no problem with their signature. You know what I'm saying? They got over the number, and there was just no question that they had the right amount. And this is pretty, they weren't over by double either. And this wasn't quite double, but it wasn't over by 5%. You know what I'm saying? So, So this is at best for the recall campaign, this is kind of embarrassing.
Yeah, no, and absolutely, it would be horribly embarrassing if they don't make the ballot. But even this delay,
almost half of their signatures are bullshit.
Yeah, they're spinning it now, and they have to, because they've gone this far, right?
And if they do voter fraud, wouldn't it be crazy, like sort of poetic justice, that the DA's office goes after them for engaging in voter fraud?
There's usually not a whole lot of fraud when it comes to these things. Signatures or voting, like, Mickey Mouse doesn't vote, right? Because Mickey Mouse can get registered, anyone can fill out a registration form, but Mickey Mouse still has to turn up to vote or cast a ballot and sign it. And even in these situations, it's usually not so much fraudulent as it is. It's just they don't live in the state, or they're not from here, or they're not registered to vote. Right? They're just not eligible to sign a petition. A lot of the time, that's usually what it is. So it's not so much fraudulent, like they made up shit and said Tony Romo signed my petition. Not that he would, but
I'm not saying it's likely. I'm just saying that if there was some,
there's probably some for sure.
If there was some real bad shit going on in the group of people collecting the signatures, where they were like encouraged to, maybe try to fudge the numbers in the hopes that nobody would notice or whatever, it'd be really poetic justice if the same DA, the office of the same DA they tried to recall, ends up going after somebody in their organization.
I imagine she wouldn't, lessen the enhancements in that case. I'm pretty sure she'd throw the book at them.
She'd be like, "Oh, you want tough on crime? You got it."
You got it, bitch.
Like you said, that's among the most unlikely things to have happen here. But it would be
poetic justice. Yeah.
So for And Another Thing, you have no idea, but you're also crossing the streams this week with And Another Thing.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I just thought it was really fun.
So on Saturday, the reason you're crossing the streams, on Saturday night, our guest host for Catterday will be someone whose channel is called VC Archives.
Oh, sweet.
So you know what she does, she does on her YouTube channel, right? Clearly,
just watches old VHS tapes, or
she tries to archives them. She tries to.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, there you go.
I mean, she does some commentary stuff, but most of her project is archiving old VHS tapes.
That's a great idea.
The reason I found her is because she found some old Scientology stuff through whatever, who knows how, she gets each individual tape. She probably wouldn't be able to tell you on any individual tape, because this is a massive archival project she's working on. But she is bringing us some of the best stuff from her archives to run on Catterday, along with cat videos, because we got a complaint from that same community, actually, that we don't run any cat videos on Catterday anymore. So we've been running some of those. But I bet you didn't expect to cross the streams this week twice.
Hey, more power to us. It's just it's beauty of Echoplex Media. We're all in this together.
It's all the same potato.
There you go.
So this story is from it's from the local news, and this is she's not alone in this. This is a kind of a growing thing happening on places, specifically particularly like YouTube, is people finding and archiving old VHS stuff. And we wouldn't probably be able to do our Cults and Satanic Panic show if there weren't people doing this, because a lot of the stuff from that we're going to find about the Satanic Panic is going to either be from some crazy church group that sent out a VHS tape to their followers, or maybe somebody archived, was just recording the news and happened to catch like a news hit about Dungeons and Dragons, and it happens to be on one of their old tapes. Somebody found it and is archiving it. So this is pretty cool. And I wonder what the news is going to say about this. I wonder if they're going to try to say that this is bad. I think they're probably just going to think it's neat, but Who knows?
I love it, so I'm hoping that they will treat it the same way, lovingly. And it's another thing, so hopefully it's uplifting.
Well, let's take you back in time. After the introduction of DVD delivery and streaming video, the number of U.S. video rental stores went from about 15,000 in the mid-'80s
to 15.
To about 2,000 in 2017.
Yeah, Dina Demetrius shows us how a growing number of people are rewinding to VHS these days.
It's tangible. It's in your hands.
Welcome back to the future. It's the return of the VHS tape.
In the beginning, I was going to thrift stores, I was going to estate sales, I was going, scouring Craigslist and OfferUp. This is like the kind of funny horror section.
Cinematographer Matthew Renoir eventually collected enough tapes to open Be Kind Video in 2022.
If it's like horror tapes or 80s and 90s kind of action sci-fi stuff, that's the stuff that's like the most popular.
Renoir is riding the wave of old media popularity. Like the resurgence of vinyl records, VHS tapes are more than a bit of nostalgia for customers like Aaron Thorell.
People love that sound of the hiss, right? It just gives this different vibe, this different feel.
VHS has been winning followers on social media, with many fans referring to themselves as tape heads.
Yeah,
for Rich Summer, it's a new way to share memories with his 13-year-old son Patrick, who loves horror movies and old cartoons on tape.
Because the cartoons, when you watch them on VHS, like the color really pops, and it's just like a new way to enjoy them.
Of course, today you can get a movie much faster connecting to a streaming service, but fans say a store like this one offers a human connection. Be Kind Video holds regular movie nights where customers can come together. Connor Holtz says the events provide a sense of community.
I believe it matters as a subculture. It matters as people care about it and want to preserve it, and they want to kind of enjoy that kind of camaraderie. So I believe it'll continue.
Seems VHS isn't dead yet, and no one is putting these babies in the corner anymore.
Do you have any VHS tapes?
No, I don't. They're all junked.
I know. I should have kept them.
Be kind, rewind, though.
Oh, he was waiting the whole time to say that.
I'd say he waited for it all day, man, all morning. And by the way, interesting note, maybe I'm just like under a post-pandemic thinking, but were they awfully close in that two shot there, the two anchors? It just seemed like they were awfully close. So maybe it's just
they were standing, and that's just where they ended up on the. Yeah.
It's odd, man.
Maybe they thought it was in 4:3, right? Maybe they thought that they were being recorded for a 4:3.
Right. We got to cramp it in. It's 16:9. You can spread out. But yeah, so that was the oddity there. But hey, I'm all for this. I joke lovingly in the docket about dudes in their stepmom's basement, but that's me. I love VHS. I still have my VHS tapes in a box, and I can't wait to bust them out whenever anyone asks. I especially love the double tapes, right? When you had to go and physically take the one tape out and put one in, because I love my 3-hour movies. I'm really into those. So yeah, God bless all these, and I hope that someone can find a way to make them last forever, because they don't. They definitely wear down over time. So
that just found that's a person that's a good lead. That's a good lead for me to reach out for an interview. Talk about his shop and ask maybe the dude's archiving some of the stuff too. Ask him about like an archival process and all that stuff, because I'm starting to become friendly, online friends, of course, with this gal who's doing that, and I'm learning some cool stuff about like what people do to like fix problems with audio and video on those tapes and stuff. So
you can make a connection. You can make a love connection even. Who knows?
Oh, I definitely not.
Love for VHS. Anyway, that's another thing.
Love for VHS, sure.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yes, obviously, and we've covered that already. You're just looking for fun. It's okay.
You want to read the show out?
Oh, fine, if you insist. Well, thanks so much, Producer Dave, for another fabulous week on Down Ballot. We do this every week, 7:30 Pacific, right here on Twitch, and then it gets out on your podcatcher of choice. So please stay tuned for that and download it and share it with your friends, and then invite them to watch the live stream. It's a nice reciprocal little cycle of love here at Down Ballot. Stay tuned for Public Comment coming up next. Stay tuned to all the other wonderful shows on the Echoplex Media Network. Be sure to get yourself masked up, vaxxed up. Pants are optional. This is Audible Smoke, and I hope you have a wonderful week. Peace out.
party started. Pick up my phone just to check and see who's calling. Dress up real nice for the ladies at the bar, and I'm driving in my car just to get to where they are. Here at the local scene is where I plant my feet. It's where I smoke my cigarette and I hold my drink. I look at all my friends, they're all blazing greens. Here at the front of the stage, waiting for MTV. Where are those guys who's standing next to me with a pipe in his hand, ready to blaze for me? About 5 minutes later, we're all singing Queen. Now get the fuck up on stage, man, like the scene. Yeah, we do what we want, and what we want is to jam. So sit back and enjoy the band. We do what we want, and what we want is to jam. So sit back and enjoy the band. Enjoy that band. I turn and head back to the bar for a refill, man, because you know where we are. We're headed out to the car to smoke another one and another one. Now just when the magic starts kicking in, I hear relapse playing, you know it's time to head in. Alright everybody, now it's time to grab a new drink. Spark it if you got it and then pass it to me. Yeah, we do what we want, and what we want is to jam. So sit back and enjoy the band. We do what we want to do, and what we want is to jam. So sit back and enjoy the band. Enjoy that band. Last up on the bill for the show tonight is Down and Dirty at 5, so we're headed outside to spark up another joint. Now who's got my lighter? Stoner E, of course, shouldn't you be inside?
I'm all up in this bitch, being who I gotta be. I'm fucked up like the U.S. economy. The truth is that I don't think logically. Stoner E take you on a psychedelic odyssey. Now inside motherfuckers is rockin' me, and outside shit we smoke a lot of broccoli. Rocky the roller, yo, that sexy girl be jockin' me. Ain't too drunk to fuck, but I'll probably do it sloppily.
We do what we wanna do, and what we want is to jam. So sit back and enjoy the band. Enjoy the band, enjoy the band. We do what we want, and what we want is to jam. So sit back and enjoy the band.
Marley say that he like jamming, and he hope he like jamming too. Well, I gotta say, thank you, Bob, we do. Yes, I gotta say, thank you, Bob, we do. Well, Bob Marley said that he like jamming, and he hope he like jamming too. Well, I gotta say, thank you, Bob, we do. Yes, I gotta say, thank you, Bob, we do.
We do what we want, and what we want is to jam. So sit back and enjoy the band. We do what we want, and what we want to do, what we want is to jam. So sit back and enjoy the band. Enjoy that band. We do what we want to do, what we want is to jam. So sit back and enjoy the band. Enjoy that band. We do what we want, and what we want is to jam. So sit back and